Hello, everyone. You're welcome to the Women Lighthouse podcast. This is a community for purpose-driven women who desire to live their dreams and aspirations. Our mission is to inspire you to live your dreams one day at a time, while serving as a beacon of hope and guidance. We will be addressing various issues related to womanhood. Join me as we explore our journey of life together. I am your host, Uyime Hamilton. Hello, ladies. You're welcome to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. It's always great to have you on the show. So today we are going to be exploring the topic of surviving kidney disease, a transplant survivor story. And on today's episode, the aim is to raise awareness about the risk factors for developing kidney disease and also ways in which we can maintain a healthy kidney. And based on research, it's been shown that the common causes of kidney disease include acute kidney injury due to recurrent urinary tract infections, and chronic conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, kidney stones, genetic disorders, tumors, or autoimmune diseases. And with regards to this topic, the World Health Organization has also shown through research that approximately 850 million individuals with some form of kidney disease have turned out to be women. Women occupy 11.8% of the statistics compared to 10.4% of men who have been estimated to develop chronic kidney disease. And also, research has shown that the risk of chronic kidney disease increases with age, especially amongst women aged 65 years and above. And 9 out of 10 women with chronic kidney disease are unaware of the fact that they actually have a kidney disease. And women represent a significant portion of the patients who require dialysis or kidney transplants in order to treat end-stage renal disease, which is kidney disease. So with all these statistics, it shows that women are a vulnerable population when it comes to kidney disease. And that's why we want to create awareness. And today, in the studio with me, is a lovely friend and a kidney transplant survivor. And her name is Mariam Gbadebo. She's the founding executive director of MARC Foundation, which is a non-profit organization that is committed to enhancing women's health and also empowering issues with regards to climate justice across Africa. Alongside her work in the non-profit sector, she's also a renowned broadcaster and an on-air personality who uses media and communication to advocate for social change and development. And she's also an alumni of the esteemed African Center for Leadership and Strategy Development. Throughout her career, she has spearheaded and co-hosted numerous radio shows and live events that delve into crucial topics such as education on health, women's rights, gender equality in collaboration with both local and international organizations. From her lovely wealth of experience in the media sector and also in the non-profit organization, she's passionate about applying her expertise and making substantial contributions to the advancement of women's health and empowerment. And she's here today to share her story. So you are welcome, Mariam Gbadebo. It's great to have you here today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm very humbled to be on this program. And I'd love to say a very big thank you to Women Lighthouse for inviting me to be on this program today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let's get right into the conversation of today. So I want you to please share with our audience your story leading to what required you having a kidney transplant.
That's quite an intense one. For the story, well, the story is quite intense. You can imagine the story isn't something I can, just put in a few minutes. I guess that's why we wrote the book. But I will take you through the basics of what led up to my kidney transplant. So I like the fact that you gave out so many statistics earlier on in the program. One major thing is kidney disease is a silent killer. That is, most people don't actually realize that they have kidney disease until it's too late, because kidney disease is something that it doesn't really portend symptoms early. The symptoms don't show early. So by the time you start showing, like a pregnancy, by the time you start showing symptoms for kidney disease, you're usually tilting towards the third stage, 3, 4, or 5, which is usually not a good place to be. That most likely requires you to be on dialysis. As for me, as you mentioned, I was going about my business, doing my career. I would like to say I was at the peak of my career. Everything was going well, good and fine at the time. And I had no form of, never could I have imagined that I would have to deal with a storm so big. At the time, I had projects in front of me lined up. My year was pretty much scheduled, good to go. I'd like to say that I was living a simple life. I could never have imagined for a moment that my life was about to take the detour that it did. The first observable symptom for me that I spotted with kidney disease was the swelling. I started noticing irregular swelling in my legs. It started with my left leg. It would swell up to the ankle, sometimes even above the ankle. And then it would go down the next day. It would go down the next day. I initially attributed it to maybe a sedentary work lifestyle, because I sit a lot. At first, I felt, maybe because my work requires me to sit quite often. I'm always on the console. I'm always reading the news. I'm always in the studio. So I felt maybe because I'm always sitting, this is why my foot is swelling. There's something about us as human beings. When we see certain things, your mind tells you there's a problem. But human nature, we would like to rationalize it and tell ourselves, it's nothing. I don't want to think the worst. Maybe because a lot of us are grounded in spirituality. So when you see a symptom, your first inclination is to brush it aside and say, it's probably nothing. I'm not going to allow myself to think along any scary directions. It's probably because I've been sitting too much, driving too much, or not resting enough. It's probably one of those 3 things. So the following day, it went down. And I was convinced, see, I was right. I said it's nothing. It's just a casual swelling. I think I need to be more careful and walk around more. But no one could have been more wrong than I was. After that, the right leg started to swell in sympathetic patriotism. The right leg became sympathetic to the left. So while the left leg started swelling, the right one started following. And then it became one day on, one day off. The leg would swell, then it would go down. It would swell, then it would go down. After a week, I noticed this swelling had become a major thing. But it didn't even stop there. While my feet were swelling, I also noticed that I was extremely fatigued. What do I mean? Normally, as you are now, I'm sure if you want to climb a flight of stairs, you won't think about it twice. I mean, a typical flight of stairs is 5 to 10 steps. You will climb it. But I noticed that at a point, after climbing 3 or 4 steps, I was always out of breath. I was breathless. I would have a racing heart. I feel as if I had done this really strenuous exercise. I was always tired. And then I lived on the top floor of my apartment at that time. So I had to climb about 20 stairs. Sometimes it would take me almost 20 minutes to get up the stairs because after 4 or 5 steps, I had to stop and catch my breath. Alongside the fatigue, I started having poor sleep at night. At the night when I laid down, I would feel as if I had a weight on my chest. Because when I laid on my back, it felt as if I couldn't breathe, as if someone was pressing down my chest and blocking my airways.
Yeah.
I noticed the only time I would get relief was if I would sit up. So for a certain period, a period of maybe between 2 to 4 weeks, that's how much time I gave myself rationalizing, or still telling myself, this thing is, I've probably just been overworked. I kept looking for rational excuses to justify what I was passing through. I would have to prop up pillows at my back to be able to breathe properly. Because if I laid flat on my back, I would not be able to breathe well. I was having constricted breathing. I would open the windows sometimes at night, and the house would still feel stuffy as if I couldn't breathe. By the time the swelling now became permanent, I noticed for 3 days, the swelling now stuck and didn't go down. I knew there was something to be concerned about. I've mentioned some symptoms. Those are not all the symptoms, but I'll reiterate. My first symptom, the first and most obvious symptom for me was the swelling. There was swelling in my legs, and the swelling was very severe. I even have pictures. I put some pictures in the book. It was very severe. It was so severe. Like my feet could barely fit into my own shoes anymore. Swelling all around my ankles all the way up. There was puffiness around my eyes. There was now fatigue. And then the shortness of breath. Those were some of the most obvious symptoms. Then came along the other ones like loss of appetite. My appetite was really bad. I would go for hours without eating and not even notice that I had missed my meals. At the moment I put something into my mouth, I would be running to the bathroom to vomit. For some reason, I couldn't keep food down. I was not sexually active at the time, so I had no reason to even suspect any activity in that regard. So I knew something was up. Because me, I know in that regard, please, I'm literally a nun. So there was nothing. But why was I vomiting ever so often and feeling so sick and tired? I knew it was time to reach out. So I called the doctor. At this point in my career, everything was amazing. I had opportunities waiting for me to just embrace. I had schedules. I had what I would consider my life, my career was in a good place. Never could I have a diagnosis that I was going to receive. When I spoke to the doctor on phone, I went to the hospital. She asked me to come in, and when I went, unfortunately, my doctor was a female. When I went in, she had a sit down. She said we need to run some tests. But initially, she was like, I should elevate my feet for the swelling to get the swelling to reduce. But I should try to also prop up myself when trying to sleep. She gave me some short-term remedies while we ran the tests. When the test came back, I was the one who wasn't ready. Usually when a lady dresses up and she's going for a party, they'll say they weren't ready. I was the one who wasn't ready. I promise. I was not in any way ready, not even remotely ready for the diagnosis I was going to get. My doctor at the time told me I had stage 3 and renal disease. I had stage 3 renal disease and that I needed to commence dialysis immediately. I was like, what are you talking about? You don't know what are you talking? This is what we say about doctors. You know, Nigerians, we can be so overly emotional. I mean, we can be emotional, and then for somebody who is supposedly a broadcaster, you feel like, what are you saying? How can you tell me I have kidney disease? I don't drink, I don't smoke. And I mean, I'm not casting any kind of judgment or aspersion on anyone, but as a person, I drink water. I don't even drink soda. So what are you saying? How does someone just, how does kidney disease fall on you like that? You don't know what you're talking about. I was in total denial. I rebuffed it. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I need to find a new doctor. What are you saying? I was upset. I left. But the moment I heard that thing, you can imagine it was as if peace was stripped away from my existence. Kidney
Yeah.
disease. What are you saying? How can you say kidney disease? I drink water. I drink about 4 liters a day. Little did I know that the water I had been flooding my system with was also contributing to the swelling.
So what was the primary cause of the kidney disease in your own case?
You see, my case is rather peculiar. My case is
Okay.
rather peculiar. So, I've learned per time that the two major symptoms of kidney disease, the two major causative factors of kidney disease are diabetes and high blood pressure, hypertension, popularly known as hypertension. In
Yeah.
my case, I have something called, or I had, by the grace of God, something called an autoimmune disorder. I had something called an autoimmune disorder.
Okay.
I
Okay.
previously, I can see you're already smiling. So, because as a doctor, you already
Yeah.
know where I'm
Yes.
going.
Yes.
An autoimmune disorder, as a doctor, you can explain it better to the listeners. A case where
Mm.
your body just wakes up in the morning and
Yeah.
decides it wants to attack itself. Like
Yes.
it's just in the mood to attack itself. Now, this autoimmune disorder had led me to previously have a thyroidectomy in 2018. I had a
Oh.
previous thyroidectomy in 2018 for this purpose, which had left me with a scar around my neck. After my
Mm.
thyroid, I had lived a pristine life, staying away from anything I felt could cause me any more health issues. So the last thing I ever wanted to hear in my life was that I had kidney disease. And not only was it kidney disease, it was stage 3. I was in total denial. I was in total denial. I was the last person to accept it. Me, Adiola, never. I was ready to challenge it. It was as if I was in the court of law. I took it upon myself. I went for tests upon tests. I went for a battery of tests. And as God would have it, the more tests I did, the more they continued to verify the same piece of information I had received at the initial stage. But the only issue was that the more I was going for tests, now I was already tense. I was not starting treatment, and I was even adding to the pressure that I was under because the tension of the news had me so overworked. I wasn't sleeping. So at the end of my testing, it even got worse because by the time I must have run like 6 tests at 6 different diagnostic centers. At the
Wow.
end of it, they verified that it wasn't even stage 3, it was stage 5.
Wow. End stage.
Yes, it was actually end stage renal
Mm.
disease. So that was how I began my journey to transplantation. Very unprepared,
Mm.
very defensive, very in
Mm.
denial, very heartbroken. I never saw it coming. Like I said, kidney disease is a silent killer. It doesn't show symptoms. By the time the symptoms start to show, it's a delicate time of your life. And for me, I was so busy with my career, I didn't pay attention to the signs which were obviously there. I kept trying to rationalize them, which is one thing that I now try to tell people. When you see a sign, when your body is speaking to you, please listen. That's one
Yeah.
thing now, when your body is speaking to you, please listen. And don't put down your body for something inanimate like your job or money
Mm.
or facing. When your body is giving you signs and telling you there's an error, when the warning sign is beeping, just the same way when your fuel tank is about to go
Like,
empty,
yeah.
the warning light comes on. Like if
Yeah.
you don't stop, this car is going to quit on you. I
Yeah.
ignore all the warning signs, and you'd find a good number of us do that. So I try to tell
Yeah.
people how your body speaks to you. Please listen. For health is truly wealth.
Yeah. So basically, you talked about the fact that you were in denial. after the diagnosis. So how were you able to navigate that season and handle the whole process? And what did this experience also teach you?
Well, one thing I will say is when you see survivors, people who have survived things like gender-based violence, things like rape, when you see survivors who have survived things like, ailments like kidney disease or cancer, there's a whole trauma that comes attached to that lived experience that somebody who hasn't lived the experience may not entirely relate to. You will find that a survivor may be able to relate to another survivor because there are words that can be said, there are emotions that can be expressed. But in terms of denial was the first stage of my diagnosis. After getting my diagnosis, I really suffered from a lot of denial. Even after going from the test and getting that verification that I had the disease, I struggled. Dr. Hamilton, I promise you, I struggled. I shed tears. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was traumatized, extremely traumatized. I felt like, God, are you against me? Like, what have I done here? I see people who drink. The denial was more traumatizing than even the sickness itself because I kept asking, where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? Denial was a long period. Denial also included me not wanting to go for treatment. Part of denial was listening to people who said they had tradomedical options. Because whenever you get the diagnosis, we live in Nigeria, we live in a society where everybody believes, oh, that's tradomedical, oh, this your leg, oh, my uncle. Then one terrible part of denial was living with society. Everybody had a solution. Everybody was an expert on this diagnosis except me. I would go to work and somebody would say, this thing, my uncle used to have this thing. There was one man, they gave him something to drink. I will connect you. I will take that one. Drink. The swelling will get worse. Somebody would say, oh, I have a pastor. I know one person. Once they just touch your leg, everything is gone. In fact, that's a point. And don't get me wrong. I am a Bible-believing, born-again Christian. So don't even think for a moment that I'm not a child of God. I'm a proud child of God. So when I'm talking about this from an enlightened perspective that not everyone who calls themselves a man of God is an emoji. Not everybody claims to be an emoji is a genuine emoji. At a point, I had no less than 12 bottles of anointing oil on my dressing table because every single person who came claiming to be praying for me, to be praying me out of this situation, had an anointing oil. There was always a monetary something that had to follow. So aside from dealing with the pain of the disease, denial came with trying to self-medicate, trying to self-source solution. Everybody knew somebody. But unfortunately, all these avenues were actually compounding the situation. They were actually compounding the situation. So for a period, I didn't even go for medication, for proper treatment. I was actually exploring traditional options to see if truly there was a natural way to rejig my kidneys and get them working again. When it got bad, when my hemoglobin dropped to 8, my hemoglobin actually dropped so low. So low. When my hemoglobin dropped so low and I was now extremely anemic, my PCV was below 18. At that point, it became crisis. When it crisis, it was no longer my prerogative to get treated. It required an intervention to get me into the hospital.
So how long did it take from when you were diagnosed to when you now decided to seek like medical intervention?
So let's say I got my diagnosis around early January. I believe I officially started dialysis same March, April, at least for 2 months. Like for 2 months, still kept trying to see if there was a way, if there was some natural way, because I sort of knew my dad had passed away from kidney disease. So when I think kidney disease, I felt there's no way once you start dialysis, and the doctors would say once you start dialysis, no going
Yeah.
back. Like
Yes.
no going back. There's no going back. There's no
Yes.
going back. I also decided to do something that I would now, in retrospect now, I would advise people not to do. Going on Google, going on Wikipedia to try and look for solutions. In
Yeah.
retrospect, now I encourage people greatly from doing that, because sometimes you think you're informing yourself, but you're actually misleading yourself and
Yeah.
misinforming yourself. Then I would read articles about how someone used bitter leaf to drop their creatinine levels, and how someone took scent leaf to drop this one. I explored everything explorable under the sun. If money could buy it, I
Yeah.
was willing to explore it. For two
Yeah.
months, I was hurting myself further, thinking that I was actually seeking out a solution. And like I said, when it got to the point where I required an intervention to actually get me on dialysis, the moment I started dialysis, I felt my life was over. That was the lowest point in my life. That was actually
Wow.
the lowest point in my life, yes. Because
Why?
then
Why
I
was it the lowest
felt,
point?
at that point, because I had this mindset, when you talk about misconceptions,
Mm.
because this misconception that once you start dialysis, it's over.
Mm.
Your life is over. I've never done dialysis. I remember my dad then in the earlier days, before dialysis was as modern as it is now, before there was this much awareness about kidney disease. My dad passed away from kidney disease in 2003. Back then, the tech they have now is not the tech they had then. So
Mm.
my narrative was, once you just start dialysis, that's it. Your life is over. You don't have a chance to do anything with your life. You are just going to be
Yeah.
stuck in the hospital. Well, that is another misconception that obviously people really need to change. That's the thing about having a lived experience. You're able to talk about it from an informed perspective, as opposed to somebody who's just saying, do this, and do that from an ideal or theoretical perspective. I can now speak from a lived experience view and tell you, at that point, starting dialysis felt like my life was over. My career had ended. I was dead. That was how I felt in my spirit. Like, it's over. There's no hope. It's done. The devil, Lord, you said the devil will not win. How am I here? So I was depressed. I didn't speak for days. I
Wow.
was I was overwhelmed. I went through all the worst emotions, including suicidal thoughts at that point that a person could deal with.
Wow.
They had to keep
Wow.
medications away from me. They had to keep
Mm.
sharp objects away from me, because I had to watch opportunities. I had to watch opportunities. Just I had to let go of several opportunities, and it was quite touching for me. It was a terrible time for anyone. It was a terrible time. I'm so pleased that I can be smiling about this now.
Yeah, that's really a touching story. So, with regards to all these emotions and experiences you had, what's now made you decide to proceed towards having a kidney transplant? What prompted your decision to now seek to do a kidney transplant?
All right. So something that I'd like to mention is that there's very little awareness about dialysis, kidney health, there's very little awareness in Nigeria about dialysis, kidney health, transplantation, and all that. And one of the reasons why we founded Mark Foundation is to create more awareness around it. At the time, I had heard of transplants. I had heard they did a heart transplant, they did eye transplants and things. I'd read about that in the news. I think the first heart transplant was somewhere in South Africa, but I had never bothered to learn about kidney transplantation. I hadn't even thought it was an option. And as I had mentioned earlier, at the time, I really was at the lowest of lows. I didn't even think there was a way out. So in the process of doing dialysis was 3 sessions a week. Because my hemoglobin and my blood levels were so low, it included blood transfusions. I was consistently on blood transfusions, just trying to bring my blood levels back up to even 22 or 23, which was such a struggle. I was white as a leaf. It was a terrible period. And during that time, I felt very hopeless. Then one particular day, a doctor came in and she diagnosed me, and then she said, oh, my liver was also getting
Wow.
that day. And by this time, I was already on oxygen. And at that period, it was shortly after COVID. So we were all just recovering from the whole shock news of COVID. If you remember 2021, everybody was still just recovering from the shock of COVID. Oh, COVID has killed people, use your face mask and this and that. So she had come in and mentioned something about, oh, my liver. I'm like, ma, do you hate me? Like, I'm already in a bad situation. Even if you saw my liver was enlarged, did you need to tell me? That was how aggressive. Like, wow. I can tell you that if you see me now as a smiley, chirpy person, I was anything but this. I was anything but what you see now. I was angry. I was hurting. And when you say hurt people, when someone is hurting, you don't see yourself projecting that hurt onto others. I felt cheated by life. I felt cheated by society. And here was someone still coming to tell me, I mean, how can you even explain to me? I see people buying what we call shekbe, quote and unquote, standing by the roadside, they will cut shekbe, they will drink. None of them had kidney disease.
What is shekbe?
Shekbe is all what we call shekbe is like a slang for all these little sachet alcohol drinks. You know those little, I think they banned them now, but at the time, little sachets of hot drink, hot gin and coke.
Yes.
I would be furious. Like, you see people smoking their lives away. How come none of these guys got diagnosed? How is it me that's drinking water back to back that you now decided to give diagnosis? So I wasn't in a great place. And the doctor now compounded issues by saying I was having issues with my liver, which I later found out was not the case. But the tummy that she was actually still a side effect of the dialysis. The big tummy growing was a side effect of the dialysis. At that time, I was on oxygen a lot. I was sleeping and waking up on oxygen because my breathing had deteriorated so badly. I needed oxygen even for the most basic of activities. I was mostly bedridden at the time. I had to have several sessions of dialysis ever so often. So it felt like a miserable experience. And then one day my matron, so let me tell you a funny story. Let me try and lighten it. Then my matron. So my matron at first was she was my enemy. The matron who first started my dialysis. I hated her. I used to pray prayers that were not good for that. Because she was the one that started me on dialysis. Right? And as a doctor, I started with femoral dialysis. Femoral dialysis, which means that they puncture you your femoral nerve very close to your region. It was hellish. And that was happening to me every other day. So I used to see how the devil itself So anytime I needed to go for a dialysis session, I used to just hate the woman. I was already depressed. I was angry. I had all the negative emotions anyone could have at the time. So for the 4-5 hours of my dialysis session, I won't say a word. I won't say a word. And then she will come. She will come. There were 2 dialysis nurses at the time. There was herself and she had an assistant. And the hospital I was using at the time had only 2 dialysis chairs. So it was only 2 patients that could dialyze at a time. So I would just sit on my chair. They would come. Mostly with dialysis, the patient would sleep off. Me, I was too stubborn. Sleep qua. I'll just be staring into thinking about my life. How? Hey, just thinking about when this is done and dusted. Someone needs to explain to me how I'm the one in this situation. Then she will come around. She will come and look me in the eye. Is this girl sleeping? Is this girl awake? Hello? Are you okay? I'll just look at her and hit and just keep quiet. I didn't even say a word. For the first 2-3 weeks of my dialysis, I was very uncooperative with her. They would laugh and say, oh, she'll get over it. They would literally say things and you could hear them. So I didn't like the woman. One day, because I had an opportunity at the time to travel, I had a scholarship waiting for me and dialysis sort of. So my visa, my ticket, everything arrived while I was on dialysis. My passport was delivered to me while I was on the dialysis machine.
Wow.
That day, tears streamed down my face when I got my passport. I was looking at my visa stamped, visa D, resident. I was livid. But that was the first tears, just all the anger came out with hot tears. And while I was on the machine, tears rolled down my face and I wept bitterly. For the first time, she came and she pulled her stool and she sat close to me and she said, "You're a young girl. What is it? For weeks I've watched you. You don't talk to anyone. You just sit here. You don't even sleep. Other people will sleep. You won't sleep. You just be staring into nothing." She now came at me with a motherly, not a matron, not a nurse, but now as a mother. She sat beside me and held my hand. And at the time, there's a way there was a way they run it such that your cannula is also in your hand. So there's a limit to how much mobility your hand can even get for those hours. And she said, "Talk to me." She was compassionate. I think at that point she was applying psychotherapy. She managed to get me to talk. The moment I talk, she says, "So you have a voice like this. So this is how you sound this guy. So you even have a voice that I've never heard you speak or do anything." And I poured out my heart to her. She was the first person to really get through to me. And that day she started, educating me about dialysis and letting me know that dialysis is not the end of the world. You can actually that there are people who are dialyzing and still working, that you just have to find it in your heart to first reach a level of acceptance, accept that this is where your life is at this moment in time. Then you must build up a strength within yourself to keep living regardless of what is in front of you. You need to keep living. And she spoke to my heart. She spoke to my head. She was not a nurse that day. She was a mother. And she spoke very passionately. That was the first day she informed me about something called transplantation, because she was trying to convince me that it wasn't the end of the world and there's still hope. There's a way out. This doesn't have to be the end for you. So she gave me some lectures. She informed me. She gave me some information about transplantation, the process, the requirements, the funding, and that it was an option. So I should not feel hopeless and helpless, but I needed to be strong and strive towards transplantation. I can tell you for free that matron became one of my best and most lovable one
Wow.
of my most lovable women, mothers. She literally now put me on her back. Then you, this girl that you gave me wahala for 3 weeks. In one more day, you, this girl, we will find a way. We will get through this. She was also the person who taught me that in any difficult situation you face in life, your confessions matter. Your confessions matter because your confessions are a reflection of your heart. Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. You must be mindful of your confessions. She started to teach me every time I paid for a session. Don't you dare make negative confessions about your situation. Adiola, you're coming out of this. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, tell God that, Lord, this situation for me will end in testimony and joy. That she drummed it into my ear so much that even to date, when I find myself in a difficult situation, I remember that one prayer that she taught me, that Father, in the name of Jesus, my situation will end with joy and testimony. This situation that looks insurmountable in front of me, Lord, I thank you because it will turn to me for a testimony and rejoicing. And I mean, look at me now. She knew something I didn't.
Shining and glowing. Yeah, so by the way, I just want to ask, this is not really, it may be relevant, but as at then, how much was the cost of a dialysis session?
So when I began dialysis at the time, a session was costing 40,000. That was in 2021 when I started. One session cost 40,000. I was also getting blood transfusions, and each pint of blood was costing 15,000. I would also have to buy Recomon injections and iron sucrose. Recomon injection, when I commenced, was 9,000 naira, and then iron sucrose was 2,000 naira. So if you were to add it all up, 40,000 plus 15,000 plus Recomon, which was 9,000, and iron sucrose, which was 2,000, we were looking at an average of over 60, almost 70,000, 55,000, that's 64,000.
Almost 70,000.
Almost 70,000 per session. Because
wow,
for each,
you were having 3 sessions in a week.
I was having 3 sessions in a week. So we're doing an average of 200,000 a week, minus the drugs, because there were also medication. There was X-Forge. There were other medications which I needed to be taking. For instance, at the time, X-Forge, I think, was costing 11 or 12,000. I also had to have Fesolate and other drugs which I was taking. So the total cost for even nursing the ailment itself was humongous, to say the least. It was humongous. And that doesn't even include regular, that does not in any way include like your regular bills, minus your healthcare. Yes.
So for how many years were you on dialysis before you had your transplant?
I had my transplant in January 2022.
Wow. Okay, so let's say roughly a year.
It wasn't up to a year, but
almost
over 6 months. Over 6 months, yes. It was over 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Why I asked that question is so that our listeners at least will have an idea of what the cost of having to go through a transplant, and this was even in 2021.
This wasn't even a transplant. This was the cost of dialyzing.
I'm sorry, dialysis, yes. And this was like 3 years back. So you can imagine what the cost will be now. Wow.
Yes.
So in other words, they always say that prevention is
the best
cheaper.
cure.
Yes, it's the best cure. So I just asked that so that at least our viewers can have an idea of the cost for the dialysis. So now going into providing support, basically. I know you've mentioned a few things. You talked about psychotherapy, talked about surrounding yourself with people that are empathic. So if there's a woman listening to this today and she's going through a similar challenge, or has or knows someone who is going through a similar challenge, what other kind of support will you recommend for such women?
Well, whenever one is faced with a diagnosis of a terminal illness or even an illness in general, in this case, it was purported to be a terminal illness because if one doesn't get treatment on time, it's a downward cycle. So whenever anyone is faced with such illness, it's very important that the woman is surrounded by a very compassionate support system. Compassion is so key. Why? Because I can guarantee you that that woman is facing a barrage of emotions. She's facing all kinds of emotions. During my time in dialysis, my period ceased. I lost weight. My skin was not looking anything like my skin is looking now. I was almost the color of this thing that you see on my dress. I was almost the same color as this black portion of my dress. My skin was dead looking and scaly and dry because they had to constantly keep draining my body to reduce the water content. So a woman with such a diagnosis will face everything from depression to body image issues.
Yeah.
You lose all the fat on your body because dialysis sessions they don't just wash the toxins from the blood, they also wash the nutrients too. It's like passing your blood through a washing machine and pumping it back into you. And you have 2 days to take tablets to supplement you, and the next day you're back on that same machine to wash it out. You have to face body image issues. There's also the feeling of usefulness. Such a person will battle with their role in society. When you empower a woman and she's busy, when she's able to constructively, financially contribute to society, there's a feeling of satisfaction that comes from her. You take away a woman's independence and make her dependent on others. You're dependent on others to move around. You take away her financial independence, make her dependent. There's emotional battles and hurdles that she needs to cross. People must understand that in that moment, the woman may not be objective. The woman may not be objective, and it's not restricted to women. Generally, both male and female, when people are going through traumatic experiences, objectivity is not entirely nearby. They are not the most objective of people. I can tell you categorically that I was not objective at the early stages of my diagnosis. I was angry. I was just angry because it made no sense to me. I couldn't rationalize it. So a woman in such a situation needs a strong support system. She needs patient people. She needs loving care. And she also needs somebody to constantly remind her that just because you're on dialysis does not mean your life is over. You need to fight. The same way she has people telling her she doesn't need to be surrounded by people pitying her. Pity is not helpful. It will only make the woman wallow in depression further. So she needs people around her who are going to be her strength, people who she can draw strength from, that even when she feels hopeless and helpless, they remind her that you're not hopeless, so I need you. Do you understand me? I need you to fight this because me, I will not forgive you if you quit on me. Do you understand? She needs those kind of people just the same way she needs a voice of compassion. She also needs firm and tough love. Somebody who's going to tell her, my darling, this is a diagnosis, it's not the end of your life. You will fight and you will win. Just like a coach guiding his team to victory. Just because your team has a loss doesn't mean you're going to scrap the team. So because what? So what? You got a difficult diagnosis. So what? The doctor says you can't have children. So what? The doctor says your uterus is not viable again. So what? They gave you a kidney disease diagnosis. It's not the end of life. You can still live a fruitful life. And that is what many women need to understand. So what? There's a challenge in front of you. What? So what? You want to throw in the towel and quit on yourself? You don't get to do that. So she needs the voice of people who need to remind her, Adiola, you are still in there. Dr. Hamilton, you are in there. You are not your situation. You are more than your circumstance. You are more than your situation. You need to tell yourself, convince yourself, and remind yourself that you are so much more than what you are passing through. You need it. So women need to be surrounded by that kind of energy. There's a loving energy, but there's also a faith energy. There's also a driving energy. Girl, you're not quitting, because me, I'm not quitting on you. Let me give you an instance. There's a woman, yesterday I had 2 cancer survivors pay a courtesy visit to our foundation. One of them is a male and the second is a 23-year cancer survivor. They survived colorectal cancer. And they were sharing the experience of a lady with me. Very sad situation. So the lady was diagnosed with colorectal cancer and she had the surgery, but they gave her a colostomy bag. And you know the implication of a colostomy bag. That means she has to be changing for, her excreta has to come out and she has to be switching her bag. I saw her picture. Beautiful lady. She could not cope. Mentally, she could not cope with the changes life had dished her. I'm not joking. This lady lost her battle. She's no more.
Wow.
She could not cope. Mentally, she could not somehow find herself recovering from the loss of her career, the changes physically that her body had to go through. She couldn't I feel, unfortunately, she didn't have the right support. She was poorly managed. Because there are signs. When you're losing her, you will see the signs. People around her should have seen the signs that you're losing this girl. She's falling into depression. She's no more today. So one thing that I would plead with people, life is an expert at dishing difficult situations. And life doesn't pick and choose like, oh, today I'm going to pick Mr. A to dish. It's random. It can happen at any time. Life is a combination of good and bad. It's a combination of ups and downs. One of the lessons I have learned is that when bad things happen, don't be a victim. There's no victim in life. You've got to face it head on and give it your all. Put your best. Fight for your life because you are worth living. You are worth it. So fight for that life. Don't quit easily. Let's look at it from a spiritual perspective. If the devil wants to end it for you, if the devil comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy, if the devil wants to put an end to it all, you too, don't give him your life on a platter. Fight for that life you've got. So there are many things that I have learned and taken away from this experience. One of them being that bad situations come, bad times come, but you don't have to quit just because bad times come. If you fight, you can get back up and you can put yourself out there again.
Wow, that's so inspiring. And during the course of our conversation, you've mentioned your book. Can you tell us a little more about your book and how we can have access to it?
So my book is a memoir. It's called Renewed, A Journey Through Kidney Disease and Triumph. And it's a very explicit, it's a very explicit journey from, the beginning. I took the reader through the early stages of diagnosis, life before the diagnosis, the crazy days, what I like to term as the crazy days, when I was anything but reasonable. I was so unreasonable. And then the fighting days, the days where we needed to fight. And I mean, just a bit of being back here. So the book is going to be available online. I'll give you that information you can share with your readers. I look forward
Yes.
to,
Yes.
have out. We'll be sharing it on platforms. Hopefully, we'll have a session to talk about the book much later. I feel grateful to be here, to even be one of the people 3 kidneys later. 3 kidneys later, sharing my experience and letting people know that
Yeah.
you can smile even after the rain. There's actually
Yeah.
something after the rain.
Yes, yes. So I encourage our listeners actually, because if we're going to sit down to talk about your story, I don't think we're going to finish
They can do.
this session. Yes, because we've not even dived into the whole experience about the kidney transplant. And I know that would have also been a whole lot for you, and we can have access to that in your book. So
Yeah,
I would want to leave that detail for our listeners to go get the book. Definitely, the link would
be
be
up.
put up in the description box. So, as we draw our conversation to a close, can you just share a little also about your foundation? You said you, after this experience which you had, you formed the MAC Foundation. So, just tell us a little about what you do and the activities you engage in.
All right, so our mission at the MAC Foundation was established in 2023. I had my transplant in 2022, and post-recovery, I knew I needed to create more awareness because I realized very few people actually have awareness around kidney health. So we established the MAC Foundation with a mission to see an African society, to have an African society where women live healthy and fulfilling lives, where women are empowered financially, emotionally, and we also have champions of climate justice. So what we do at the MAG Foundation, we focus on creating awareness and advocacy around women's health, not just women's health, but good health and well-being. Talking about everything from kidney disease to transplantation, maternal and infant health, tuberculosis, HIV, hepatitis. We want to be creating awareness about the things, even autoimmune disorder, because there are very few people that even know what autoimmune disorder is. And there's so many ailments that women have, hormonal imbalance, they don't even know. People are just walking around taking medication. They don't know much about what's going on the inside of the body. And people just believe
Yeah.
that, oh, if I look good, it means I'm healthy. But that narrative is not entirely correct. So we push early detection, screening and early detection. We're very passionate about prevention, screening and early detection. Get checked regularly. Go for regular health checks. It is cheaper to make sure that you are healthy and maintain good health than to fall ill. It's not even in this economy that anybody wants to be admitted in the hospital. Trust me, you don't even want to be admitted in this economy. So
Yeah, very true.
it is so important that you go for early screening and detection. Find out what is going on in your body. Maintain your good health. It's easier to maintain good health than trying to recover from ill health. So make the right lifestyle changes. There are lifestyle changes that can make a person's life better. When you wake up in the morning, first thing in the morning, drink water. Drink 1 liter of water, 75 cl at least. Reduce your intake of sodas. Most people don't know that, soda is not the best for your health. Reduce your intake of soda. Reduce sugar content. Exercise regularly. Exercise is not until you go and lift all the weights in the gym. Take a walk, 10 to 15 minutes a day. Sometimes park your car and just take a walk. Take a walk, but
Yeah.
keep your body active. Number 3, stress. Stress is a killer. Learn how to do yoga, meditation. When stress enters your body, it hides, it transforms into illness. When you let stress in, stress is like a guest that you did not imagine all the things. Have you ever had a guest that you opened the door to the person came into your house, and before you even showed them the chair, they enter your kitchen and open your fridge? We have I'm sorry. Who are you again?
Stress.
You can just say stress is that unwanted guest. Stress is that guest nobody wants to entertain in their house, because stress has a lot of excesses. When you let stress into your body, it translates into illness, or it manifests in form of different kinds of illnesses. So we as women, we need to learn to do yoga, simple breathing exercises. When I'm stressed, sometimes I'll lay back on my back, take a deep breath, breathe in. You know how they say, smell the roses and blow out the candles. Smell the roses, take a deep breath for 4 minutes, hold it 1, 2, 3, 4, count to 4, and then let it out of your system slowly. You will physically feel your body getting lighter. So people need to learn those simple remedies. Eat fruits, eat healthy, eat fruits and vegetables. I understand the economy is, wonderful. People need to reduce their bread intake. Reduce your bread intake. Reduce soda intake. Eat more natural foods that are growing in the ground. These things help. These little lifestyle changes can make big difference in your health and longevity.
Wow. I don't even need to ask any other question because you've answered it all. And Mariam, I just want to say thank you first for the courage to share your story with a lot of women out there. I am 100% sure that a lot of women have learned 1 or 2 ways in which they can improve their overall health and also improve their kidney health. And also women who may be going through a challenging situation with regards to their health, even if it's not a kidney disease, I believe they've also been able to learn how to navigate through that phase. So I just want to say a big thank you and also a big well done for turning your pain into purpose. I could see the passion in which you exuded when you were communicating and sharing your story. And I can really say that God has used the process to make you a better woman and a beautiful woman at that. Anyone that sees you and doesn't hear your story would not know what you have been through. You do not look like what you have been through. So I just want to say a big, big thank you. And to our listeners, Mariam's inspiring story reminds us of the importance of prioritizing our kidney health and our overall health. So we need to be aware of the risk factors which we've earlier mentioned with regards to kidney disease, and every single suggestion she has made for you to prioritize your health is important to take it seriously. Why is it important? If you look at how old you are today and you add 20 or 30 years to your age, the quality of life you will have in your 60s and your 70s will be dependent on the decisions you make today. So if you do not want to be in and out of the hospital at your elderly stage of life, now is the time to pay the price to develop a healthy lifestyle so that while you are old, you can also enjoy your old age. So I just want to say thank you for tuning in and listening to today's episode, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. Tell us one thing you have learned and one thing you have decided that you're going to do as a result of this episode. And also make sure to check out Mariam's book. It's going to be an inspiring story where you get all the juicy details of how she was able to navigate through her journey. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. I hope you were inspired to keep taking steps towards living out your dreams. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to share it with other women and leave us a review on our social media platform, which is in the description box. Also, feel free to subscribe to our channel to get notified of new episodes. Till I come your way on our next episode. Keep living, keep dreaming. Bye for now.